stand down or be cut down.
You gotta be fucking kidding me. Rule number 1, read the manual.
A typical family is enjoying a child's birthday on a lovely day. The kids are in awe of a cowboy's lasso-throwing prowess, while mom and dad are conversing with friends and barbecuing food. Later, when the kids are about to eat cake, Cooper's daughter freezes and looks off into the distance. When the man looks back, he witnesses the city rising beneath a massive cloud of nuclear mushrooms. The blast wave hits their house in the following minute. Nuclear mushrooms rise behind Cooper and his daughter as they mount a horse and ride off, while the owner conceals his family in a bunker. It has been 219 years. A multi-talented young woman, Lucy resides in shelter number 33 with her father and brother Norman. Finding a partner who isn't linked to her is regrettably unachievable. As a result, the council chooses to approve her marriage to a man from a different colony. The content girl dresses in the communal wedding gown, as her neighbors, under the direction of her father, the warden of the shelter, set up tables for the wedding, which is set up on a field with a three-dimensional representation of far-off mountains. Although he regrets that her mother didn't live to see her daughter's wedding, the father is delighted for his daughter. Next arrives the moment when individuals approach the portal, watched over by Chad, Lucy's cousin, who serves as the gatekeeper. Despite his deep affection for the girl, he can't deny the justice of genetic ethics. When the young man pushes a button, a delegation from a nearby colony enters through the portal. Their boss tells them that they need machinery spare parts and seedlings in order to have fresh blood. Lucy receives a young man, they register their marriage, and everyone takes a seat at the tables. The guests are pretty impolite, as the shelter's occupants observe, but they choose not to bring this up. In an address, Lucy's father expresses his hope that the following generation will at last make it to the surface. People have fun and dance. The groom asks the girl to show him the bedroom, much to Norman's dismay, and she shows him there. While Norman patrols the colony and unexpectedly discovers a colonist's body, the young couple gets to work on their tasks. Unexpectedly, Lucy hears a scream in the distance. She puts on a global bracelet which indicates her young husband's radiation infection right away and suggests he is a surface dweller. Sensing that she has discovered him, he throws her against the wall with a violent thrust. The girl is stunned as she witnesses the man grab a knife and get ready to murder her. Lucy tries to grab the knife after recalling her abilities, but the man stabs her in the side instead. An alarm goes off at that same moment. The man becomes sidetracked, so Lucy hits him in the head with a vase to knock him out. After giving herself some first aid, she dashes to the armory, where she quickly locates a pistol and heads to the room where her fellow tribesmen are still present. After killing an alien she meets, she exits the chamber and sees a real combat taking on. When her unwelcome husband shows up, Lucy is able to save Norman, but her father drowns the son-in-law in a barrel of water and runs to report a breach in the doors. Lucy chases after him before freezing in front of a group of extraterrestrials who have the occupants of the refuge as hostages. The leader of the attacker gives the man an option: Lucy or his fellow tribe members. Her father confines her in a compartment while the girl tries to figure out what this means. When an explosion blows up the gates, his captors take him to the surface. In the meantime, young men are defeating Paladin Maximus in the Brotherhood of Steel barracks on Earth's surface. After assisting the man in getting better, his companion takes him to lessons where they learn practical wasteland skills in preparation for their future as knights. They have to be able to recognize ancient objects because they are guardians and seekers. At this point, Steel Knights show up at the base, much to the Paladin's amazement. A little later, the friend takes Maximus to see their armor in a hangar. When Maximus hears shouts of celebration later, he discovers that several of them received promotions. One of them is his pal who will work as Knight Titus's assistant. But a deafening scream wakes everyone up in the barracks in the morning. It appears that the girl who would become the assistant had her foot badly damaged when someone stuck a blade in her boot. Maximus is taken to the head of the Brotherhood after being arrested. Things are getting back to normal in the shelter. While Lucy is tending to her stomach wound, a council meeting is in progress. She asks for the formation of a team and they're dispatched to the surface to look for her father, but the council won't take this action. After getting everything she needs, Lucy and her brother go to the gates. As Chad runs to follow her, she sedates him and bids Norman farewell. The girl steps onto the surface as the gates open. She turns to face the sea after surveying the area of sand where remnants of the previous disaster are still present. Maximus refutes the accusation that he maimed a friend out of jealousy. After realizing the youngster is innocent, the leader assigns him to be the Steel Knight's helper. The leader gives the Knights and their helpers the mission of tracking down an escaped scientist who has taken a very valuable item the following day. Titus the Knight and Maximus the Knight board a chopper and take off for their assigned sector. Simultaneously, a group of bounty hunters entice a feral ghoul from the afterlife in order to locate the scientist. The ghoul is en route to Moldiver the Witch, with whom it shares a history. The ghoul shoots the hunters unexpectedly and moves off on his own. As Lucy traverses the surface, she stops one day to set up camp close to an abandoned home. She starts a fire and curls up by it to sleep. When she wakes up, she hears unusual noises and discovers a dog eating a large bug. The cockroaches not only survived the nuclear explosions, but they also underwent a mutation that made them extremely dangerous, according to a man who is sitting by her fire. Since the girl is ignorant of the laws of the outside world, he suggests that she return to the shelter. Nevertheless, Lucy must locate her father. The man walks away. Maximus and the Steel Knight land in the appropriate sector in the meantime. The scientist on the run hides in a cave near their landing place with his dog. The Knight arrives there with his helper at a later period. The Knight enters the cave as soon as Maximus discovers the sought-after scientist's footprints. Maximus, who is unarmored, is compelled to accompany him as well. A gigantic mutant cave bear assaults them within. The beast overwhelms the Knight as they fight, and Titus abruptly begins to flee. Maximus just almost kills the enormous beast. It comes out that the Knight is a weak man who belittles and accuses the youngster. Next, instead of trying to find the fugitive himself, Maximus lets the injured Knight die and declines to resurrect him. He puts on the armor and gains proficiency with it. The child is in awe of his newfound strength and the seemingly endless opportunities that lie ahead of him. He also happens to save a weakling, however. It turns out that the weakling wasn't all that excellent. He understands that he must first determine who is deserving of protection. When Lucy arrives in a town, she is told to search for signs of her father's abductors. As she walks into one of the stores, an elderly salesperson recognizes her as a resident of the shelter and tells the girl to get out of here. No one here will help her. Shelters are underground havens where the rich hid while the rest of the world perished. When the girl steps outdoors, the scientist with the dog comes over to greet her once more, looking startled that she has returned. The saleswoman, however, who is actually waiting for him, cries out to him at that point. The ghoul, who has also come for the scientist, suddenly makes an appearance. When the saleswoman offers money to anyone who assists in defending the scientist, he plans to take him. After stopping the scientist in his tracks by shooting him in the leg, the ghoul starts fighting the people who are vying for the prize. While Lucy enters the store covertly, locates the order book, and discovers Moldiver's address, the ghoul shoots everyone. She hears the scientist's cry for assistance and witnesses the ghoul hurting his dog, but she still wants to go. He only laughs as she defends him and uses a capsule to shoot the ghoul. A Knight then appears in front of the ghoul. As he battles the ghoul, Maximus asks the girl to watch over the scientist. After escorting the injured scientist into the shop with the saleswoman, she gives him an iron leg and agrees to go with him to Moldiver, providing her with the coordinates. As the two go, the ghoul engages the Knight in combat and rapidly discovers his weak point. Maximus lost his capacity to navigate because he hasn't fully utilized all of the suit's benefits. When the Iron Knight is launched far from the store, the ghoul discovers that his intended victim has fled. Lucy and the scientist pause for a break while the girl looks horrified at the scientist's injured leg. The man affirms to her that they won't make it. He admits that he will pass away shortly, but she has to give Moldiver his head. He dies after taking out a saw. A while later, the ghoul tracks Lucy, who is transporting the head to Moldiver after discovering the scientist's headless body amid the sandy dunes. The girl soon comes to a halt to relax, and after having a snack, she looks at the head and wonders what makes it unique. She places a tracking device in its nostril just in case. Maximus investigates the armor and discovers a flaw. He is surprised to receive a call from the base out of the blue. He reports the death of his assistant and, despite his strong objections, he is promised a replacement. When the youngster gets to the closest town, he discovers a workshop. After spending all of his money to fix the damaged module, he returns to the suit to find that some local robbers are trying to take apart the armor for scrap metal. He fights back, taking a strong blow to the face. When the youngster comes to, he finds that the armor has been broken. He utilizes a nearby piece of metal that he picks up to destroy the assailants. He then witnesses a chopper landing and delivering a new helper. One of his training camp tormentors turns out to be the assistant. Maximus closes the helmet, and the replacement goes unnoticed by the new helper. Lucy arrives to the location that formerly housed Hollywood. When she comes upon a pond, an unidentified creature ambushes her, stealing the scientist's backpack and vanishing into the water. Lucy attempts to pursue the thief but finds herself in the ghoul's line of sight, explaining what transpired with the head. This is when the Shelter Council looks into Lucy's escape, and that's when Norman finds out that nobody is going to look for his father or sister out in the desert. The helper continues to serve the Steel Knight voluntarily, despite Maximus torturing him with a litany of sins in an attempt to exact revenge for previous humiliations. Using a unique tool, they locate the ghoul's footprints, trace them, and eventually come to the scientist's headless corpse. Using the girl as bait, the ghoul launches a search for the undersea monster. The beast appears on the beach shortly. Although it grips Lucy, the ghoul is able to free her. The aquatic monster flees, stealing her boot, but the girl just about repels it. Lucy follows the furious ghoul. The aide to the Steel Knight is now filling the armor with water while discussing his life. Maximus invites him to introduce himself all of a sudden. The boy admits that they beat him because it's customary, just like they would any other newcomer, but that he was actually a kind guy. He now feels sorry for Maximus, that he did not survive to see his call to duty. They keep walking and eventually come to the pond. As soon as the two step into the water, they spot the monster. Maximus assumes control of the battle and orders the helper to go ashore. However, the animal pursues the youngster when he fires at it. After pulling the youngster free from the monster's jaws, Maximus causes it to vomit out Lucy's boot and the scientist's head in its final act of death. After that, a dog approaches them and follows them. Depriving Lucy of water, the ghoul guides her over the desolate area. They soon reach the location where Star Cooper and his spouse used to work at a movie studio. They soon come upon an abandoned clinic where they can hear the screams of men. As they enter, they discover that an old friend of the ghoul is suffering from mutation. Since the ghoul lacks the necessary medication to treat the ailment, he spares the unfortunate soul from suffering. Dad explains that they need to eat. The girl still doesn't understand why ghoul did it. The girl says that although they never ate their own kind, they too faced difficult times. In order to take this flesh with them, the ghoul then makes Lucy chop up the body. They go on, however, the girl finds it harder and harder to survive without water. The ghoul eventually comes to a halt in front of a building that is collect radioactive water. Lucy can't help herself and begins to sip it, winning her friend over. At last, she is starting to comprehend the life that exists on the wasteland. Her future lies with him, and it won't be far off. Lucy tries to run away while he coughs, but she pauses in front of a large crater and becomes entangled in his lasso. She bites off the ghoul's finger by accident, and as a result, he chops off one of her fingers. They soon arrive at an abandoned supermarket, where the ghoul makes a deal to the woman in return for the supplies he needs. Lucy walks into the building, stunned, not realizing that the ghoul passes out. A robot welcomes her inside. After inviting Lucy to follow and giving her an artificial finger, it begs her forgiveness, admits it will just take her organs, and sedates her right away. As Norman is later feeding the aliens taken prisoner during an attack in the shelter, one of them admits that the people living in shelter number 32, which they had previously taken prisoner, were plotting a terrible deed. When Norman tries to get on the network to look up shelter number 32, he finds that the information is private. Along with Chad, they clear the debris and enter shelter number 32, where they discover the residents decomposing corpses in a desolate field. It appears that they killed each other if they were already dead when the aliens came. When Lucy awakens, she finds a large number of women imprisoned in glass cabinets and prepared for organ harvesting. The robot releases her restraints as it is about to expose her chest cavity. Squirming out from under its saw, she turns off the robot. Then, after reprogramming the robot and filling syringes with drain cleaning, she visits the awful establishment's proprietors with its companion. Some people run away when she makes them release the inmates, but not everyone does. Lucy pushes the final cage to unlock. When the owners comply, zombies emerge and start tearing apart two organ traders. As the final zombie is about to attack, Lucy looks around the battlefield in dread, only to discover that she is holding a pistol. As Norman and Chad investigate the nearby shelter further, they discover that a key with the name of Norman and Lucy's mother was used to open the entrance from the outside. Despite the torment she had to endure, Lucy finds the ghoul some medicine to keep her alive and gives it to her. She may resemble him externally, but she will never be the same on the inside. After the girl leaves, the ghoul enters the broken-down shop and gets the prescription drugs he needs to get himself somewhat back in order. Then he stuffs pills into his hat. However, he then spots a video recorder, inserts an old tape featuring Cooper as a cowboy, and settles in front of the TV. Maximus and his helper take a seat to relax. Fos is ecstatic to have been saved because knights don't usually treat their helpers well. He requests a brand. Maximus nods and raises his visor, but the assistant attacks after spotting him, shattering Maximus's leg in the process. However, Thaddeus succeeds in removing a nuclear core from the armor, rendering the exoskeleton inoperable, and he departs carrying the scientist's head. Massive cockroaches attack the immobilized suit right away. Fearful, Maximus waits to die as Lucy moves closer to the knight, and the insects start to scatter from the gunfire. He provides her radiation sickness medication after she takes the man out of the suit, and explains why she needs the scientist's skull. Lucy advises that they attack the head jointly after she heals. They will give the tracker she possesses to the Brotherhood, who will then use it to locate her father with the aid of the knights. Maximus concurs. Simultaneously, Betty takes over her father's position as warden of Shelter 33. Norman looks into the shelter's past, since he finds this objectionable. He then discovers that all of the caregivers had come from Shelter number 31. When Lucy and Maximus arrive at a bridge, two vagrants halt them. Seeking permission to pass, they put on a brave face. The pair tries to leave by lifting their hands. Though he hurts his hand, the wary Maximus is able to fire first and spare their lives. Lucy sees how innocent the people living in the shelter are. They soon come to a new California Republic sign. The girl is furious because, despite their notion that they are destined to revitalize America, everything has already surfaced. Maximus comforts her, saying that in any case there is no republic. They soon reach a massive crater in the center of the city. When Lucy discovers that Maximus's wound is far more serious, she guides the youngster to a building with a clinic sign. The boy admits that he escaped this torture by hiding in a refrigerator. Maximus is late, and when he arrives, the girl is not there. He goes in between two doors to a chamber and looks for her. The boy loses consciousness as the gas fills the room. Because these resources are too precious, Betty leads her people to Shelter 32 and announces a partial relocation. The removal of the bodies and the disappearance of all evidence of the catastrophe surprises Chad and Norman. After his mother passes away, Norman wants to know where her key is. Betty acknowledges that they used it to bury the woman. Stretcher-ridden, Maximus and Lucy emerge from the shelter. Maximus gets health treatment. The boy needs treatment, so the shelter director asks the pair to stay. In addition, the vendors have located armor and will bring it over shortly. The leader tells Lucy that, like many of them, she was born on the surface, and she is grateful for the haven. The couple stays in isolation for a few hours. It becomes clear from the exchange that Maximus had never experienced a woman's affection. The youngster feels ashamed, but Lucy needs to teach him this craft as it is accepted in the shelter. Furthermore, among knights, it is not customary. Later, when they go out to lunch, they discover to their surprise that a large number of the people in the area are physically abnormal. It turns out that the caregiver is a cyclops. This is weird to Lucy, but Maximus does not get why she would be concerned. Lucy is shocked to learn later that the caregiver admits to her that they welcome individuals from the outside, as this was previously absolutely forbidden in her shelter. However, the caretaker cuts her off right away when she inquires about the restricted level they were told not to go to. Maximus discovers a room with a nuclear block placed that powers the whole subterranean. The leader gives him the electronic key to his private compartment and advises him to take a little break. As soon as the youngster walks in, he is astounded to see a basket full of treats and unusual items. He slips on a robe and slippers, showers for the first time in his life, and indulges in unidentified items. Lucy, meantime, discovers a room that contains a detailed account of the Californian Republic's entire history. It appears that life was briefly restored here in 2142 before being wiped out in 2277. Lucy is appalled and questions why or for whom a fresh war was necessary. All of the occupants of the shelter respond to a sound signal by moving to the assigned location. The so-called new president of the territory, who ran an organ trading store, captures a ghoul in the meantime. They say the ghoul is to blame for destroying it. Nonetheless, he calmly requests a needle and thread to repair his finger and asks where Moldover is located. However, the president gives the order to murder the ghoul. The ghoul needs to find the woman on his own and kill the new law enforcement. Lucy leads the group into a chamber with an altar and flickering candles in the center. People start singing and clapping along as Lucy eventually loses consciousness and starts to help the others. Lucy is shocked to see individuals start undressing out of the blue. Everyone takes some powder from a bowl and rubs it over their faces. Lucy learns horrified that the powder is actually the ashes of the deceased, blood in a different bowl. They cry out to the Mother of Flame, imploring her to save them, and over their heads Moldiver appears. Lucy, who has become terrified, rushes to Maximus and begs him to flee right now, but the youngster is unwilling to go because he has just entered such a paradise. Lucy then goes to the area that is off limits. She walks into a lab where it appears that some human genetic experiments have been carried out. Examining the gory exhibitions, the girl is startled to see glass cryocapsules containing human bodies. Nevertheless, a man wearing a white coat enters as the lights come on. While Lucy is hiding, he hears a sound, pursues it, and discovers the girl. When the men who are arriving find Lucy fighting, they drag her to the top floor. In the meantime, the ghoul shows up at the Digger family, whose oldest son is aware of Moldiver's whereabouts. The youngster obeys the terrified man's commands to divulge everything he knows, and he acknowledges that the woman is at the observatory. However, the child tries to kill the ghoul as he is ready to leave and pays with his life for it. While they had provided Lucy with food, shelter, and healing for her companion, the shelter officials simultaneously humiliate Lucy. But having witnessed what they do to people, the girl is enraged. Subsequently, they play back to her the entire tape of the creature that nearly ate her, attacking the lab. The people who experimented on humans and transformed them into monsters were the first occupants of the shelter. All they are attempting to do is lessen the suffering of the survivors. Lucy is unaware that every shelter has a specific area of expertise when it comes to experiments. She still needs to receive punishment for her disobedience, though. Maximus witnesses the girl being carried away. Maximus notices his leg is in terrible shape when he stops to rest. When a dog starts to disturb him, he puts it up in a metal box and leaves to find a radio tower so he can get in touch with the Brotherhood. Lucy is now banished to the surface by the occupants of the refuge. They also provide her with a source of food. This is exactly what the girl wanted, so she is shocked. However, she begs them to let her companion stay in her final words. Subsequently, Maximus emerges wearing a knight's armor, and he has placed the stolen nuclear block inside. The girl stops him as they are about to let her go, even though he has scattered the men. As they ascend to the surface and discover that he has taken the nuclear block, Lucy persuades him to give it back because the shelter needs energy to function. After they take the block down, Lucy describes him as a decent man. Then he admits that he is not a decent person at all because he allowed a knight to die and stole his armor, but he still truly wants to accompany her. A man posing as a doctor approaches Thaddeus and offers to mend his leg. He brings the youngster to a deserted clinic where he offers him a potion that, when consumed, ecstatically heals his limb in return for a nuclear block. In the meantime, the ghoul tracks down the imprisoned dog that Thaddeus left behind and uses it to guide him. When the boy arrives at the radio station, there are traps around it that will rip anyone who approaches too closely to bits. Thaddeus signals the Brotherhood and converses about music with the proprietor of the radio station as he waits for them to arrive. Lucy and Maximus then show up. The girl demands the head of the scientist. The youngster unintentionally stumbles on a trap, piercing his neck with an arrow, yet oddly he survives. Maximus then becomes aware that he has turned into a zombie. Thaddeus is angry because, although he shouldn't have trusted the unknown physician, doing so would have prevented him from joining the Brotherhood because they would have killed him right away. Copters arrive on the horizon at that moment. Thaddeus seizes the chance when Maximus tells him to hand over the scientist's head and flee. Maximus gives the head to Lucy. The girl gives him a kiss and says she will wait in shelter 33 when he asks her to run. Notifications on their move to the adjacent block start to reach some residents of Shelter 33. Seizing the chance, Norman signs up for the caretaker system, uses deception to obtain access to Shelter 31, and makes his way there. When the attendants arrive, they take Maximus and carry him to the camp. The youngster acknowledges that his knight died and gives the leader the head he took. They give him the death penalty after discovering nothing in his head. Subsequently, his pal admits that she sliced her own leg because she was too afraid to look for help. Maximus yells that he is aware of the whereabouts of the true head. They all get ready for a show as the leader gives the order to release him. Lucy arrives at the observatory at that point, seeing her father seated at the table in a cage. The girl is astonished to see a dried-up but still living mummy sitting next to the host when Moldaver greets her. For her freedom, the girl is eager to offer her the head. Moldaver takes out a vial from her father's head and offers to tell her the true tale, but he begs her not to listen. The woman starts telling her tale. In the meantime, Norman discovers in the hidden bunker 31 a robot that has a human brain and tries to inject him with anything right away. The boy just manages to avoid the insane machine. As actor Cooper decides to follow his wife after she talks of an impending nuclear war, the story of Moldaver takes Lucy back in time to the far-off pre-war era. Through a device he implanted on his wife, he attends her workplace and listens in on a corporate council meeting. Billionaires talk about the global sales downturn. They then discuss shelters in more detail. Someone claims that anyone emerging from the shelters will just be killed if anyone survives on the surface, demonstrating a lack of understanding of their necessity. They reply that there are abundant supplies beneath. One might live there for centuries. Their primary tool is time. Any one of them might easily outlive the others. Cooper's wife interrupts the company leaders in the middle of a heated argument. Her kid is her first priority, and she wants to ensure that she has the finest future possible. Later on, Norman finds himself in a chamber filled with rows of cryo capsules labeled with the names of everyone who slept inside of them, including his father and all the wardens. When the action jumps back in time, Cooper's wife informs that more than 100 shelters have been constructed across the country to help people realize their greatest aspirations. Norman learns from the robot in the future that each of these individuals was chosen because of their optimistic outlook and inventive ideas. Following the cleansing of the surface, they are the greatest gene pool in the nation and will bring the country back to life. The argument has come up before since it is difficult to destroy so many individuals. Then Cooper's spouse advises that they launch the war on their own. A nuclear war is terrible, but it also presents the best chance for a fresh start, as no one will be around to fight in it afterwards. They're going to take over the world as the monopoly. At this point, a young man asking for an autograph has diverted Cooper's attention. This is the youthful dad of Lucy. Moldaver tells us that the man has lived a very long period in the present. Despite being a part of the organization that planned this entire nightmare, he never told his wife about it. She possessed great intelligence. She was the one who found that the shelter was losing water due to an unknown source. Although she was aware that civilization had returned, her spouse made fun of her. The woman then absconded with the kids. They discovered a beautiful city, but her father and his troops arrived and set it on fire. Moldaver received the sea fusion that Lucy created, but that businesses had taken. Endless energy capable of reviving life. Lucy learns what happened to her mother when she notices a pendant hanging around the mummy's neck. The daughter demands that her father give her the synthesis code, even if her father begs her not to believe Moldaver. Finally, he gives in and gives the numbers. The woman departs in order to initiate the cold fusion process in the lab. After learning what it possesses, the robot tells Norman that it will not allow him to go. Simultaneously, as an alarm goes off and Brotherhood copters fly over the observatory, shooting at the people below, Lucy's father begs her to open the cage and go home. Knights and their goons drop to the ground and fight the defenders of the observatory. Maximus charges forward, looking for Lucy while the Knights cause mayhem in the area. Before long, the Knights storm into the building, only to have a ghoul abruptly stop them. It turns out that he is aware of their weaknesses, and that he too once donned armor. Thus, without suffering any personal injury, he dispatches the Iron Knights with ease. Lucy sobs at this point, feeling conflicted between her mother's awful circumstances and her father's demands for her to return home. However, a wounded knight stumbles to the floor at the entrance of the room, and Maximus follows. He bolts to Lucy after opening the cage. The child does, however, admit that her father was the one who demolished his magnificent city. While this is going on, her father puts on armor and knocks Maximus down. The ghoul enters the room just as the girl draws a gun. He was shocked to discover that Lucy had his last name, and that this was the same corporation employee for whom he had been searching for his family's location for more than 200 years. After starting the jet engines, Lucy's father runs away. But as it happens, this was precisely what the ghoul wanted, for the man leaves a trail that leads directly to the location of the world's ruling class, those responsible for the nuclear war. He begs Lucy to accompany him. After shooting the mummy, Lucy bids farewell to the inattentive Maximus and moves on to pursue the ghoul. Simultaneously, a wounded Moldaver makes his way back to the chamber. where Maximus is regaining consciousness. People now have endless energy since she turned on nuclear synthesis. As Moldiver laughs and passes away, a horrified Maximus observes as lights that have survived illuminate the remains of the city. The members of the Brotherhood who storm in believe that their friend killed the woman and rejoice that Maximus will one day become a knight. As all is going on, Lucy and the ghoul pursue her father as he travels across the desert to a far-off city.